821 million people don't have access to enough food right now. 821 million. A truly overwhelming number. The equivalent of every person in the United States, Italy, Japan, Brazil, and the United Kingdom combined. This could be your mother, your brother, or your daughter. That's a frightening thought to me. The passion that these thoughts produce, the concern, the urgency, emotion, that's what we need to tap into. Food insecurity is a global issue, one that has economic, political, social, and even interpersonal factors, all of which contribute to the complexity of its nature. But in the midst of that complexity, the biggest barrier that I see for our progress is our mindset. I see a clear disconnection between knowledge, empathy, and opportunity. The harmony of these ideas forms the foundation of the model that I see for our progress forward, not only in food systems, but a plethora of social issues. I want to start with the development of empathy for two reasons. The first is the value I see in empathy as a basis for good and moral decision making. And the second is because it's where I started my journey. When we're opposed to helping or providing aid to others, we often lack the ability or the effort to make an empathetic connection with that group. And for a variety of reasons, we decide whether consciously or subconsciously that they are not worthy of our help. The goal of renewed humanism is to alter this perspective, to return to an understanding of similarity, of shared humanity that connects us all in an effort to be better. This evolution of empathy was important to me. Growing up as a black man in the United States, I was no stranger to hardships or challenges or discrimination. Even with the opportunities and blessings of support, I still faced obstacles both socially and institutionally. And it was this primitive awareness of systemic injustice and inequity that planted the seeds for me of empathy. But it was the story of someone else that would truly nurture and grow that understanding. My sophomore year of college, I participated in a program focused on providing food and shelter for people experiencing homelessness. And during this time, I was introduced to Sarah. Sarah was a mother of two, Eli and Tasha, who had been homeless in Denver for almost 10 years. When she first walked in, I could see the stress and fatigue that were lingering with her every step. When we shared our first meal together, I asked her about her experience, and she told me how worried and fearful she was for providing a safe and healthy environment for her two children. She feared where her next meal would come from, how opportunities like school and work became luxuries that she and her family couldn't afford. Over the next week and a half, as I spent time with Sarah and her kids, I was able to take on the issue of homelessness and food insecurity with a new perspective, one that shifted my ideas from the classroom and research and set it in the very real experience of the human world. Understanding these experiences is important as we move forward. This moment was invaluable for me in my development of empathy and in my ability to frame complex and distant issues in the human experience. But the knowledge that would give me direction wouldn't come for another 2 years. As I continued my educational journey at Regis University, I focused on developing social service, including the development of curriculum. And while it was invaluable for me, it wasn't until 2 years later when I would take 2 courses that would realign my thinking. The first course was a marine biology class, where I read an author by the name of Paul Greenberg. Greenberg was an American journalist and researcher who focused on marine food systems and conservation. In his book, American Catch, Greenberg researched and illustrated that we have enough salmon in Alaska to effectively feed the entire North American population. But due to the nature of our food systems, most of this fish is shipped overseas to China to be processed and more often than not shipped back to the United States. The damage that is caused environmentally, socially, economically to ship frozen fish from one side of the planet to the other creates a perfect example of our global inefficiencies. This idea illustrated two important points to me. The first, we have enough food to effectively feed the entire planet. And the second, we are actively committing to processes that prevent us from doing so. This idea of processes superseding progress was played out on a much larger scale in my second course, The History of Human Rights in Africa and the Middle East. And while this course had a complex and detailed take on the role of colonization and of the post-colonial era, let us focus solely on the infrastructure left behind by this historic time, to observe how the historical goals and actions of colonization led to physical infrastructural systems that continue to perpetuate negative consequences in Africa, and how we can use the factual account of these choices as a learning experience that can inform our future decision making. One of the most extreme examples of this history is of the Congo in Africa, a location that has seen some of the worst consequences of colonization. One that reflects how the extractive infrastructure developed across Africa has damaged the economic and local development of independent countries. In the Congo, entire trade systems were built, including roads, trains, cities, all with the goal of moving the precious resources found in the Congo, like rubber and other raw materials, out of the land to the coast to be shipped back to the colonial country of origin, oftentimes without regard for the local cultures affected by the division it caused. This infrastructure was built using forced labor and imposed using a rigid and racist class system. And while these ideas and practices have faded from many of the modern political systems, the mental and the infrastructural consequences and the ripple of their implications can still be felt today. Africa's internal trade only represents 15% of their imports and exports, as compared to Europe, which is close to 65%. This infrastructure and these cycles have built a system that's created a dependency on outside support for local and economic development. Understanding how these problematic systems continue to perpetuate in modern African society illustrate to me how flawed processes will continue to stand if unchallenged by a collective action, one rooted in collaboration and internal guidance. Our shared goal of change must be widespread, and the mentality of complexity as a deterrent cannot continue to be the standard of our pursuit of progress, whether consciously or subconsciously. With my knowledge and empathy being firmly reinforced, it led me to my final step of disconnect, the opportunity. No one in the history of humankind has been in more of a place of agency than we are today, where we have access to the resources, the opportunity, and the knowledge to create a collective, empathetic mindset, to create change on a scale unimaginable before. We need only to continue to develop our empathy, expand our knowledge, and challenge our boundaries. This understanding, this empathy, is where we must take our steps forward in order to continue to grow. It's no easy task to identify every intricate and complex piece of the puzzle that goes into solving the issue of world hunger. But the basis of the understanding is clear. We have the knowledge. We have the opportunity. And most importantly, we have the food. We have the food. Thank you.